So I finally got to play Street Fighter 6 after a very busy June and July. And this game was on my radar after playing the demo, but for how busy those months were, it got shelved. For context here, this review is actually done after the first DLC character Rashid has been added to the game, so it is fairly updated. And of course, I grew up a Street Fighter fan. I'm not a big fighting game fan in general, but I did grow up on Street Fighter all the way back down to Street Fighter 2, Master Street Fighter Alpha. So I'm very familiar with Street Fighter. So let's get into it. Kicking things off with Street Fighter 6. The one thing I did like about it right away was the tutorial system. The game does have a very good tutorial system. You're introduced to it right at the beginning. And one of the things that you'll notice about it is that unlike previous Street Fighters, they do have different control schemes. And the control schemes are, some of it are for like newer players to get it easier for them to get into the game and learn the mechanics of it. Me personally, I obviously chose the classic setup, the 6-button setup. I grew up with that combination, so that's what I rolled with. But overall, they have good accessibility options for new players, for people who are new to fighting games. And obviously, being a fighting game, this won't be good without a good selection of fighters. Thankfully, Street Fighter 6 does have a good selection of fighters, both in terms of ethnicity, but in terms of how they play and their storylines behind it. So it is a real good selection. I did find that the visuals and performance of Street Fighter 6 were flawless. The game ran good, it looked good, and one of the things that I do like is when you do fights, as your character takes beating, it carries on from round to round. So if you do have like a 5-round matchup, he's going to get all bruised and bloodied up. I thought that was a neat little touch to the game's visual. Obviously, this is a fighting game, and nothing matters more importantly than its core gameplay. Thankfully, Street Fighter 6 delivers on this. The controls are very responsive, the inputs are good, the combat feels good, but most importantly, it's not too easy, it's not too difficult. Street Fighter 6 does have a new drive system where you can parry as well as a drive attack, which is meant to break through blocks or to add as combos. This system itself, it is easy to learn but difficult to master. In terms of classic buttons, you only need to push 2 buttons to parry or 2 buttons to drive, but it's how you manage the drive gauge and how you manage it all at once, because blocking using the drive ability all drains your drive gauge, and therefore you can fatigue your character, and you need to parry attacks to recharge that gauge quicker, or to not block or use drive attacks and allow it time to recharge. So it is a balancing act, and it's easy to learn and difficult to master, which is going to appreciate for those fighting fans who like to really sink their teeth into the game. When you fire up the game, you do find that there are 3 main modes. There's the Battle Hub, there's the World Tour, and there's the Fighting Grounds. Now, the Fighting Grounds, to me, is the bread and butter of this game. It has all the features you come to expect. It has your practice mode, it has your online, it has your standard versus mode. It even has the arcade mode where characters have their own storylines. And what I liked about the arcade mode is that every character, much like, I believe it's Street Fighter Alpha 2 or Street Fighter Alpha 1, where every character has its own boss. It's not one unified boss like other Street Fighter games. It is a varied boss, and the boss that you face will be based on your character's story. You even have the mini games where you have to blow up the truck and fight the truck. Things like that are all incorporated into the Fighting Grounds mode, and I really like that mode. It is where most people will spend their time playing this game. Flip over to the other mode, the World Tour mode and the Battle Hub. First, let's start with the World Tour mode. The World Tour mode, I like the concept of the World Tour mode. I like the fact that you can create a character. The tools to create your character are pretty good. You create your character, you enter the world, you roam around the world, you take on fights, meet other fighters to learn their styles, create your own fighting style. To me, that was like the best part of World Tour, is you can mix and match the abilities of other fighters to make your own fighter and your own fighting style for that fighter. I thought that was really, really good. as you level up, you get, you increase your health, you increase your damage that you do, you increase more special gauges, etc. The World Tour mode in terms of mechanically, I thought was great. However, the story is utter dog shit in my opinion. The story is bad. The writing is bad. It is so cringe. It is incredibly difficult to get through in my opinion. It was a slog because the story and writing was so bad that it was rough. From a narrative perspective, it was rough. I wish they had a better story and better writing for this, but overall, playing the World Tour mode was a slog for me. I enjoyed the mechanics of it, but not the story that went along through it. And the fact that the World Tour mode is about 15 hours long, beelining the story, not including doing side stuff, I think it's too long for how bad the story is. If it was like a 7-hour beeline kind of situation, it'd be tolerable. But because it's 15 hours and you got a dog shit story with dog shit writing, I mean, it was a slog, at least for me. But I do like the mechanics of it. The other issue I had comes in the Battle Hub mode. Now, the Battle Hub mode is basically a social space. You go in with your created character. There's a whole bunch of arcades. You meet other players, and you battle online. That's it. This mode is basically not even required. It's basically a spot for you to showcase your avatar. For the most part, I barely touched this mode. It was just like, what's the point when I can just go into fighting grounds, jump online there after I do a few rounds of arcade to warm up before I jump on the multiplayer. It didn't make sense to me for the Battle Hub mode. I think that's just wasted space, and most people probably won't waste their time there. They'll be in either World Tour or the fighting grounds. But overall, I liked the game. I like the way it plays, and this is Street Fighter at its finest. Street Fighter V was a disappointment for the lack of single-player content and the lack of content in general. Street Fighter VI has a lot more content and a lot more things to do, even if you're a single-player kind of player. Just be forewarned that the World Tour mode is a slog. It's a slog because of how bad the story and writing is, but the Fighting Grounds mode is where it's at, bread and butter. Pick your fighter, play online, play with friends, the whole 9 yards. That is where the action is, in my opinion. This has been a great experience for me. Street Fighter 6 is absolutely fantastic. It is a full-featured, complete game. I experienced no bugs whatsoever, no glitches. The game ran magnificently, but as I stated at the top of this review, this is also after the first DLC character, Rashid, has come out. So it needs to be said about that. Other than that, overall, I enjoyed my time with Street Fighter 6. I recommend Street Fighter 6 to any Street Fighter fan or any fighting fan in general. It does have a good accessibility. It does have options for both hardcore competitive deep divers and the casual, hey, pick up and play kind of players. It's a very well made package and well done, Capcom. I highly recommend Street Fighter 6. I'm going to give Street Fighter 6 an 8 out of 10. This is Veteran Gamer, and I hope to see you guys next time.